Hold on to your seat cheeks. We are 7 games down so far in week 0 of the college football season, and week 1 is officially coming up, spread out over 5 days this upcoming Labor Day. So we'll walk through what games you should be watching and how to set up your viewing experience. That's my favorite way to look at it. But first, let's touch on a couple of the key points here from week 0. USC took care of San Jose State 56-28. Took Caleb Williams a second to kind of get going there. Speculation is they didn't really want to show a whole lot in this particular game. He finished 18 for 25 for 278, 4 touchdowns. He had a great play where he scooped up a loose ball and chucked it in for a touchdown. A couple backups got in there as well. Austin Jones at running back put in a couple balls to the end zone there. Zachariah Branch had a breakout party, the freshman there. 12 yards on a rushing attempt there, and a couple big grabs for a touchdown as well. The point is he's fast, and he's a weapon, and he's going to be very, very good in this offense. The ball to the receiving core was spread around a little bit. Deuce Robinson had 3 grabs for 44 yards. Washington had a couple grabs for 85 and a touchdown. Branch had 4 catches for 58 yards and looked tremendous. The defense did give up a little bit there to Shivan Cordelio, who came over from Hawaii, I believe, transferred into San Jose State. He had 3 touchdowns passing, 52 yards on the ground, 198 yards passing altogether there. But the Trojans didn't look completely together on either sides of the ball. Not sure that we learned a whole lot here as far as what the complete package is going to look like. They probably weren't going to show much against San Jose State anyways. But the offense is going to be clicking, and hopefully we get some playmakers still to emerge here on the defensive end. They'll have Nevada coming up this week, so we still probably won't get a whole lot of new developments out of this team other than how explosive the offense can be. Vanderbilt fought off the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors 35-28. They looked pretty awful. A.J. Swan was 19 for 30 for 258 and 3 touchdowns, but they had a delay of game that pushed back a 3rd and long already. They were just a mess for a good chunk of the game. Yet no turnovers. Hawaii had a couple and was still in the ball game. They only averaged 1.5 yards per rushing attempt for Vanderbilt, 1.6 for Hawaii. Tell me which team it's more of a concerning stat for, the Power 5 team or the team that flew all the way across the ocean and the United States to get to its destination. Hawaii was 10 yards per passing attempt, Vanderbilt 8.6. You tell me which of those is a little bit more concerning. So the Commodores, who spanked Hawaii last season by about 50 points, really struggled so far. Really struggling so far this year. So don't know about them possibly pushing for a surprise bowl game this year. Notre Dame was the other shocker. Sam Hartman looks right at home, 19 for 23 for 251 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's raising the ceiling at the position that Notre Dame hasn't had in over a decade. Looks phenomenal, and he can really do a lot of damage with this team if that's what he's going to do. Esme had 16 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown, 5.9 yards per carry at the running back position, and just an excellent job by the defense as well to bottle up Navy, who probably isn't 3 points bad in the 42-3 loss. And the big bodies just push the midshipmen around, push the boats around the water, I guess you could say. They'll get another inferior opponent this week to push around, but we'll get a little bit more Sam Hartman, and this could really, really push the potential for Notre Dame to make the playoffs up there quite a bit. Ohio's quarterback was banged up, unfortunately, before I even got a chance to watch him play a little bit. I missed the first chunk of this game, and by the time I had it on, Chris Berkey was already out and hurt. He was very productive, going 8 for 10 to start the game out with, and his backup, C.J. Harris, was 18 for 41. That's 43%, 3 interceptions, and they just nosedived, and they would have had an opportunity to beat San Diego State on the road. 20-13 was the final there. Too bad a MAC team couldn't win on the road there against a Mountain West opponent. Would have been a nice feather in their cap there. Hopefully Rookie's healthy moving forward. He's one of the better non-Power 5 quarterbacks out there. So starting with this Thursday, August 31st, we've got 11 games on the slate. 9 Power 5 teams will be in action in those 11 games. Only one ranked squad will be in action, and that will be the big one at 8 o'clock on ESPN. The number 14th ranked Utah Utes will be hosting the Florida Gators, and that is the game that you should have on your television. The line is 6.5. I think it's fallen to 4.5 in the time that I've written these notes down here. Utah's way, a 45.5 point over under. Now, Cam Rising has been questionable in this game. He's been banged up. The number 2 quarterback was hurt in practice, so Utah may be all the way down to its number 3 guy. Florida's quarterback would be Graham Mertz, whose best game was his very first one as a freshman back in 2020 for the Wisconsin Badgers, and he's since gone down the toilet, quite frankly. But he's transferred into Florida for this season, playing for Billy Napier, hoping to revive his game under new coaching staff here, under new offensive coordinator. Now, Utah won the Pac-12 last season, but lost on the road at the Swamp in the opener in this home-and-home back and forth game here to what was really like the 9th or 10th best team in the SEC last season, when Rising threw a late interception trying to go for a game-winning touchdown. They were in position to kick a game-tying field goal at the time. It did not go that direction. But here we are, quarterback positions very much questionable, looking to be a low-scoring game. Both teams will probably be running the ball, expected to be very, very physical. And Utah should have a home field advantage here. Back-to-back Pac-12 champions. Florida could certainly sneak in and grab this game away. They do have some good backs there. It's possible. Keep an eye on this one. Now, again, it's not going to impact the Pac-12 conference race for Utah, who has the best chance to make a playoff run and win the Pac-12 conference. Yet again, they are playing the very difficult Pac-12 schedule. That includes UCLA, Oregon State on the road, USC on the road, home against Oregon, at Washington. So all 5 of the big programs besides themselves competing in the Pac-12 this season, they're all on the schedule. But next week they play a road game at Baylor, and the quarterback position here is going to be in doubt. And week 4 has UCLA on the docket. Week 5 is the road game to Oregon State. So Utah could have some real problems if they don't pick up some wins early, particularly against Florida here at home. Weber State week 3 is a gimme, but they need to get some big wins regardless of who's quarterbacking there. Florida trying to rebound after a horrible season last year. They've got McNeese State next year before they play Tennessee in week 3, and they're competing there behind Georgia in the East Division of the SEC, but this would be a big win if they could get it on the road. Again, unfortunately, quarterback, big question on Utah's side. Not sure what we're going to get out of Graham Mertz in Florida on year 2 of Billy Napier. But this is the top slated game, 8 o'clock ESPN on Thursday. 2 big names, so stay tuned for that. The other games on the slate for Thursday. At 7 o'clock, Wake Forest will be hosting Elon on the ACC network. Wake Forest, not a lot expected out of the Demon Deacons this season, but we'll get their first look there. UCF, now a Big 12 team. They're hosting Kent State, who had a massive exodus of players transferring out of that school. That is on FS1 at 7 o'clock. 36-point spread on that one. Central Florida expected to roll, but that's on the 7 o'clock time slot as well as a couple of games here on ESPN+. So good luck getting to those. But Georgia State, a good team out of the Sun Belt, will be hosting Rhode Island. Western Michigan will be hosting St. Francis of Pennsylvania. 7:30 we'll have UConn hosting NC State on the CBS Sports Network. Now, NC State's only favored by 14.5. The over-under set pretty low at 47.5. I'm not quite sure why they're going to play in East Hartford there, but they're going to play the independent team on the road and traveling up there. NC State's offense was anemic last season, and they're the quarterback transferred out. He's headed to Kentucky, and transferring in is Brennan Armstrong from Virginia, who had massive struggles of his own there with the Cavaliers. But I'm excited to see him on a little bit better football team. They've moved some things around. Hopefully the offense will be better this season for NC State. They have a good linebacking core there still intact from last season. Defense was the calling card when the offense couldn't move the ball. And they did end up playing, I think, 3 different quarterbacks, in part due to injury there. Now, UConn, coached by Jim Mora, former Power 5 coach. He did push UConn to 6-7 last year, which was a miracle in its own right. And he's got a former Penn State quarterback that transferred in to play ball for him there, and Taquan Robinson. There we go. Got a whole bunch of names jumbled up. Taquan Robinson. So a real quarterback, Power 5 level player there that'll be pitching the ball for his squad. And just very interesting that they've got a home game there against NC State. So 14.5 is the spread right there. Just interesting little game to keep an eye on there. We do have a Big Ten game, 8 o'clock on Fox. My goodness, Minnesota will be hosting Nebraska. The line is 7 Minnesota's way on this one, and 43 points. I think that's sunken below 40 at the moment in most sports books. And this is going to be a rather disgusting game. The Greek arm, or the Big Greek, I don't know, they have a clever name for him, but the quarterback taking over for Minnesota, Athan Manis, something like that. They have a clever name for him. It'll be on the broadcast. But he's at least partially Greek, and you'll be reminded over and over again during the Minnesota broadcasts. But he started a few games last year when Tanner Morgan was injured, and he's got the full job to himself now this season. Now, PJ Fleck's crew there will be rowing upstream this year, it seems like. They're losing a lot of pieces to that defense. They haven't been able to make it into the conference championship game or win that division in his time there, despite having a solid football game. So we'll see what's going on there with Minnesota. Obviously, Nebraska bringing in Matt Rule. He's known for his turning around programs at Temple and Baylor, but often on year 2. He's got a lot of transfers in. He seems to really like his quarterback, Jeff Sims, who he brought in from Georgia Tech, a long-suffering program since they made a coaching change several years back. We'll see what he can do. I'm kind of excited. I think that he may not be a great thrower of the football, but might be able to make some plays for them. But who really knows what we're getting out of this? Again, a lot of transfers coming into Nebraska, a lot of guys going out of Minnesota, but that will be the 8 o'clock Fox game for the Big Ten. Also, Missouri will be hosting South Dakota at 8 o'clock on the SEC network. Tulsa will be hosting Arkansas Pine Bluff on ESPN Plus at 8. UAB will be hosting North Carolina A&T on ESPN Plus. What else we got here? Oh, here we go. Arizona State will be hosting Southern Utah at 10 o'clock. I don't have a broadcast showing for this quite yet. It'll be almost 100 degrees there in Tempe, Arizona. But this, I'm a little excited to see if it's not buried away on the Pac-12 network. Arizona State was 3-9 last season. They fired Herm Edwards, obviously. A number of problems with his recruiting practices, particularly during the special dead period that they instituted while COVID was going on and he was recruiting during that time. That's the same cheeseburger problem that Jim Harbaugh is suffering from right now, was hitting that extra dead recruiting period they put in. In addition to that investigation that was going on by the NCAA, they lost to Eastern Michigan early on in the season. They finished 3-9. And it was a rough go as they were blown out by a number of teams. They did end up beating Washington, which was a huge blow to the Husky season, as it turned out. They found out this week about a bull band as repercussions from the investigations from, again, years back, which was terribly unfortunate. So we'll see if the team comes out any more fired up. But it's now led by a 33-year-old Kenny Dillingham, the youngest head coach and at this level of football anyways right now in the country. Former offensive coordinator for Oregon, Florida State, Auburn, and Memphis, and he is starting a true freshman at quarterback who has a little bit of a history of his own now, Jaden Rashonda, the 4-star, who was originally committed to Florida and then had something go on there where a NIL commitment to him seemed to have fallen through, not part of the coaching staff or anything like that, but it certainly seemed like he committed in part because of a promise with an NIL deal that was either an outright lie or fell through as part of some Florida booster or something going on there. And he ultimately felt a particular way about it and decided to go to Arizona State, where he'll be starting as an 18-year-old true freshman. So we have the youngest coach in the country. We'll have one of the youngest starting quarterbacks in the country, a young talent, and it'll be very interesting to see. They brought in, 21 transfers? 19 transfers at least that were former 3- and 4-star guys. So hopefully Dillingham is bringing in some good talent there. We'll have a nice young quarterback to keep an eye on as he's rebuilding that program. So not a top shelf viewing game there to check out on Thursday, but something I'm a little excited to see how it goes. Arizona State hosting Southern Utah at 10 o'clock on Thursday night. The Friday slate is much lighter, only 6 games, 7 Power 5 teams will be playing. None of them will be ranked, so there's really only maybe a couple interesting games here. No big teams, though. Eastern Michigan will be hosting Howard at 6:30 on ESPN+. Eastern Michigan actually made a bowl game last season. That is a rarity for the school. At 7 o'clock, Michigan State will be hosting Central Michigan on FS1. Michigan State only favored by a couple of touchdowns here. Not a lot of faith since the top wide receiver and quarterback Austin Thorne had transferred out of the program. I don't believe they have a starting quarterback named at this current point in time. So it'll be interesting to see what the Spartans can do here. Struggled in the first half of the game last year against Central Michigan. So we'll see what they do here. At 7 o'clock as well, ACC Network has Miami hosting Miami of Ohio. Only 16.5-point favorites are the Miami Hurricanes. Van Dyke is back at quarterback for that squad, reloading, rebuilding after disappointing first season there for Mario Cristobal. A clip is going semi-viral, I guess, of starting quarterback Brett Gabbert, younger brother of Blaine Gabbert, currently the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was interviewed. He's the starting quarterback for Miami of Ohio, and he made a point of saying the real Miami is in Ohio. So trying to make something out of nothing, really, but he's confident that they'll beat Miami on the road this upcoming weekend, Miami, Florida. So see about that, but it is a tighter spread than you'd expect with the Red Hawks going on the road there. Also at the 7:30 slot on ESPN, this is going to be the more publicly broadcast game. Georgia Tech will be hosting Louisville. Georgia Tech going through a whole reshuffling there. They'll have a new quarterback. They have a new coach. A whole bunch going on there. Louisville also brought in Jeff Brom from Purdue, and he's expected to make an immediate impact with that roster. He brought in Hudson Card, who's lost the position multiple times as a starting quarterback at Texas, so he may have a real weapon there. He still appears to be a pretty decent quarterback, especially when he took over for Quinn Ewers last year when he was knocked out for a few games. They do have some talent on the roster still. They lost quite a few of the guys that turned last year's defensive line into one of the leading sack groups in the country, but he should still have a lot of pieces in place there. They do have a fairly easy schedule this season as well. They don't play Clemson. They don't play North Carolina. They do play Notre Dame in a non-conference matchup, but that's further on down the line. They are going to possibly have, I don't want to say difficult matchup here, but a conference matchup to open up here. Road game against Georgia Tech. They're only 7.5-point favorites right now, but I do want to see how Louisville plays. I'd put that as the marquee game besides seeing how Michigan State and Miami, at least catching a glance to see how those teams work out. But again, another low spread on a game here with the clear favorite on the road being the Louisville Cardinals. Kansas will host Missouri State at 8 o'clock. This is on ESPN Plus and the Big 12 Network, unless you're paying for ESPN Plus or get the Big 12 Network. Again, this is going to be difficult to watch. Missouri State has been feisty at times playing FCS level squads. They are a team that can cause you some problems. Kansas this year is going to be very good with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. They should be very exciting on the offensive side of the ball. Leopold there has been doing a good job, of course, the past couple of years building that program, but the defense is still going to be horrific. So it's possible we could have an interesting back and forth here in that football game. And then a late night, 11 o'clock, we are going to get a late night game because it's in Hawaii. They are hosting Stanford on the CBS Sports Network. Because Hawaii played Vanderbilt so close, they certainly covered the 17.5-point spread that was set last week against the Commodores. This line has moved dramatically. Not a lot expected from Stanford this upcoming season, and Hawaii's quarterback there looked pretty good, but the Commodores, man, really shot themselves in the foot over and over and over again. The offense was supposed to be the strength. They returned their true freshman quarterback as a true sophomore and Swan there. The offensive line is supposed to be a strength, and they looked horrific. So I don't know that I'd put too much stock in that. Stanford, you'd think, would still have the bodies to push Hawaii around, but who knows? Could be interesting there on the far west side off the coast there. Hawaii hosting Stanford very late on Eastern time, 11 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. So I'd keep an eye on Louisville. That's going to be the best game. Louisville and Georgia Tech, the 7:30 ESPN slot. But again, you can keep an eye on Michigan State, Miami, Kansas if you get that network. And if you're up late, keep an eye on Hawaii quarterback Braden Schrager and that offense there. Maybe there'll be a surprise team in the Mountain West this season. Who really knows? Stanford is juggling 4 different guys at quarterback. Again, wouldn't expect a whole lot from the Cardinals. Let's get you set up with Saturday here, the main event. Now I've divided these up into the noon time slot, the afternoon time slot. That's generally the 3:30 games, although we do have those few that start at 1 or 2 or 4 o'clock as well. Those are generally some of the smaller schools, but the afternoon range, the evening range, which is your game starting 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, and then your late night slates, your noon, afternoon, evening, and late night slate of games. So let's start in the noon time slot, which will of course be lightened because of the games going on Thursday and Friday. Only 11 games kicking off right after your game day and pregame shows there. 5 ranked teams will be on, and they're going to be testing out some stuff here. So number 2, Michigan, will be on Peacock. They'll be hosting East Carolina. I'm not entirely certain if that's actually NBC or the Peacock streaming service, but Michigan will be favored by 36 points, and that game expected to pound the Pirates. ECU made it to back-to-back bowl games the past couple of seasons. That was coming on the heels of 6 consecutive losing seasons. They've only been to 14 bowl games, I believe, in school history. Not a lot of success there. They had some stability at quarterback, and they've lost a lot of pieces now. So Michigan heavy favorites in that game. Tennessee actually has a Power 5 matchup. They'll be on ABC. They currently have the number 12 next to their name. They're hosting a Virginia team, which is lost Brandon Armstrong after a rough season last year. A lot of expected from them, and he moved on to NC State, transferred out there. Of course, Virginia's season was shortened last year after the horrible tragedy on campus there. And just a lot of moving pieces for what's expected to be a not very promising Virginia program this upcoming season. This line has stayed right at 28 points on the dot for the past week. Josh Heupel, the head coach at Tennessee, his system is expected to be a little bit of a plug and play. We have Joe Milton coming in at quarterback now. He lost the position. Well, it's not true. He won the starting position a couple years back, was banged up in the opener, and then eventually lost that position to Hendon Hooker, who both took over the position when he was hurt and held on to the starting job. Hooker coming in from Virginia Tech to the Tennessee program, and Joe Milton coming in from Michigan. So he already moved at one point. So can he really hold on here with his big arm? He might have the strongest arm in college football, but can he hold on to his starting spot finally after losing it once and transferring from another program already? Receiver help, Brew McCoy will be one of the star receivers on this group. The defense has to improve, and they'll be big favorites here against Virginia on ABC. ESPN will be playing Oklahoma, ranked 20th right now. They're hosting Arkansas State, coached by Butch Jones, who's certainly been a top Power 5 coach and seen his way around things. It's always dangerous to have one of these experienced coaches at a non-Power 5 school. So Arkansas State underdogs by 36 points. We'll see if Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel back there at quarterback. We'll see if the defense is any better. Of course, they were blasted a number of times in the Big 12 last season. We'll see if the second year for Brent Venables, former Clemson defensive coordinator, goes better for him. We also have Iowa ranked 25th. They'll be hosting Utah State on FS1. We don't know if Cade McNamara is going to be ready to go for that football game. He's supposed to be an instant upgrade for that offense. And let's not forget, in the contract now, the offensive coordinator, Brian Ferentz, son of the head coach, they have to score 25 points per game and win at least 7 of them in order for him to keep his position there. Will he be able to do it? McNamara was supposed to help reach that point total per game. They were about 18 points per game last year, I believe, so this would be a significant step up for a team that still won 8 games last year and was very much in the mix of the Big Ten West race. Can they do it now with a backup? They're still favored to splatter Utah State by 25 points. Even with a quarterback question there. That's on FS1. Kentucky will be hosting Ball State on the SEC network. They're 26-plus point favorites in that particular game. New quarterback there in for Kentucky. They have I always want to say Devin O'Leary. Yes, Devin O'Leary in from NC State. And he struggled mightily last year as that offense was really inept for the Wolfpack. And that was before he was banged up for a couple games. So now he's moved on. Kentucky's offensive line can't possibly be as bad as it was last year. One of the worst offensive lines in the country and certainly in the Power 5 as far as sacks given up and pressure rate. Horrible. Got to be better there. And they're taking on an easier MAC opponent in Ball State on the SEC network. So those are a few of the notable teams playing. Michigan hosting East Carolina, Tennessee hosting Virginia, Oklahoma hosting Arkansas State, Iowa hosting Utah State, Kentucky hosting Ball State. Those will be some of the more noted games at noon. However, the big one that you should be watching, number 17, TCU hosting Colorado. This is the Fox game. It's 20.5 points, has been sitting on that number for a little bit now. I believe it was 21 at one point with a 64-point over-under. Points expected in this game. Now, TCU lost a lot of its guys on the offensive side of the football to the NFL draft. Shane Morris, who originally won the starting position and was hurt in the opener last season, is back at quarterback. So expect to have at least a high-level production there. Quarterback, of course, being the most important position. Sonny Dykes in year 2 is expected to reload the wide receiver room and get that offense clicking again. Josh Newman and Bud Clark, at least in the secondary, are expected to be bigger names, possible all-conference selections. They do have pieces back there on the defensive side of things. Guys at every level expected to be productive. Johnny Hodges at the linebacker position. So don't expect a lot of drop-off there from TCU, but we're going to see exactly how productive they're going to be after the success that they had last season. Speaking of questions and success and follow-ups, Colorado, of course, welcoming in Deion Sanders, one of the biggest moves, if not the biggest move of the offseason, to the point where Colorado accepted a bid to join a new conference next season, and they sold out tickets for the first time in a very long time. They had a boost in donor money, which led to more NIL money and more guys coming in. Just a big deal in one offseason and 0 games played as Deion Sanders comes over from Jackson State. He brings his son with him. Sadir Sanders, who was a 4-star quarterback coming out of high school. And he also brings corner and possibly two-way players, it's been stated. Travis Hunter, who was a 5-star prospect, I believe. And there's going to be a lot of guys. As only 4 starters return, I believe, 1 on defense and a couple on the offensive side of things, as 90% plus of the roster completely transferred out of the program, and a lot of guys came in from other programs there. So can he make the pieces match? His offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, was very productive at Kent State and pushing an up-tempo offense. We should get that again as him and Sonny Dykes go at it. Again, a 20-plus point spread on this game doesn't sound very appetizing, but when you look at some of the other spreads at noon, it kind of makes it a little bit more appetizing. And again, Colorado might be able to win this game. They might have the skill position player talent. And when you think about how at least on the offensive side of the ball, that TCU is reloading as well, and their coach is only in his second year, I think things start to make a little bit more sense. But on the flip side, this could be a boat race in the second half, and Colorado could get shoved right out of it. Either way, it's going to be very interesting. To me, best game in the noon slate. Check out Deion Sanders and Colorado taking on TCU and Sonny Dykes, seeing if they can reload here heading into year 2 in his tenure. Some of the other noon games, Liberty with the new coach there, Hugh Freeze, has moved on. They're playing Bowling Green on the CBS Sports Network. SMU will be hosting Louisiana Tech. LT obviously played last week and picked up their first win of the season. They're 20-point underdogs against SMU, however. Hank Bockheimer, former Boise State quarterback, put up 333 yards passing, although it wasn't particularly astounding in his first Conference USA win against Florida Atlantic, but they managed to pull the game out. Northern Illinois will be heading to Boston College to play both on the ACC network and in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. Ohio will be hosting Long Island University. Expect Ohio to be one of the better, possibly best team in the MAC this season. However, starting quarterback Chris Werke, who might possibly be fringe NFL talent, was hurt again in the first quarter last week. And boy, did Ohio have to struggle through with CJ Harris, at quarterback there. My God, was that awful. Any competency from the quarterback position, and they could have survived the game against San Diego State there. They lost 20-13. No line on this game, as Long Island does not play FBS level football. Not a line on some of these games if they're not both FCS teams. The one other game that's played between decent competition here is Purdue hosting Fresno State on the Big Ten Network. Only a 3.5 point difference here. The Boilermakers lost Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Batch last year, the quarterback wide receiver combination that made this team go. The running game was absolutely atrocious. The defense had its problems, yet the team won the West Division of the Big Ten. They were very fortunate to do so. They had the best quarterback by far, as of course Illinois, Iowa winning with defense, Minnesota winning with defense as well, and a good running back. But now Aiden O'Connell's gone to the NFL. Charlie Batch is gone. Jeff Fromm has moved on, taken the Louisville job. So you got a brand new head coach in there. The defensive coordinator from Illinois has taken the position. 37-year-old Ryan Walters has moved on, and he's got a roster that needs a whole bunch of work. He's got transfer quarterback Hudson Card, he pulled in from Texas, taking the position. He might be, well, he's not a dumpster fire, let's put it that way. Is he a real ceiling raiser? Don't know. They're not expected to actually be a bowl team, so not a whole lot expected from Purdue this season per se. A lot of building needed. And Fresno State will be replacing Jake Haener, who's gone on to the NFL and have a chance there. A great quarterback, and they'll have a new guy in Mikey Keene in at the quarterback position, but that will be on the Big Ten Network if you want to take a peek. Purdue and Fresno State. The afternoon slate will hold 21 games. 7 ranked teams will be involved, but there's not a lot of big action there. At 1 o'clock on ESPN Plus, SEC Network Plus, whatever that is, Arkansas will be hosting West Carolina. Of course, Arkansas had a lot of injuries last year, the secondary in particular, and as a result, they're one of the worst in the back end in the entire country as far as passing yards given up. KJ Jefferson is back at quarterback. He'll be one of the best in the country. They'll be playing Western Carolina to open up, so expect them to put a lot of points on the board there. Ole Miss, ranked 22nd in the country, will play at 2 o'clock on ESPN Plus and the SEC Network Plus as well. There's a quarterback battle going on there. Jackson Dart returning back at the quarterback position, and Oklahoma State transfer Spencer Sanders checking in as well, so we're not sure who's going to start there. Lane Kiffin has not been willing to give up the name of the starter. They'll probably both be playing, though. Mercer will be the opponent, so that's at 2 o'clock, squirreled away on the ESPN Plus. The Big 12 Network and ESPN Plus will also be showing at 2 o'clock, Iowa State hosting Northern Iowa. Now, Iowa State's losing their two most impactful players on both sides of the ball. Will McDonald, the defensive end, is on to the NFL, as is Xavier Hutchinson, and this team did not win a whole lot of ball games last year, despite having one of the best defenses in the country and causing a lot of problems for teams in the Big 12. They will be reloading. At 3 o'clock, squirreled away on the stupid Pac-12 network, will be number 15th ranked Oregon. They'll be hosting Portland State. Now, this would be one of the top teams to take a look at if you do get this network. Bo Nix checking back in at quarterback there. Dark horse, Heisman candidate, leading rusher at the quarterback position last year. Top in rushing touchdowns as well for the position. Very good player there. Offensive line being rebuilt, but again, a lot of us will catch the highlights of this game. 3:30 brings us the most interesting few games here. Let's knock a few of the easy ones out. Number 13, Notre Dame. You want to see Sam Hartman back there. 4 touchdowns last week in the blowout of Navy. They're hosting Tennessee State on NBC. Number 19, Wisconsin will be hosting Buffalo on FS1. You'll get to see Luke Fickell and his new quarterback there, the transfer in from MSU, Mr. Mordecai, and we'll see what he can do there. They're opening up the offense a little bit. Not sure if we'll see the passing numbers necessarily explode off the charts. They'll probably be trying some new things there. 28-point spread on that game. Number 3, Ohio State will be playing at Indiana on CBS. Kyle McCord will be breaking in at quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Get a check at that passing attack, at least for the first half there. It's a 30-point spread on that game. Auburn, a new coach, Hugh Freeze, will be ESPN. They'll be welcoming in Massachusetts. Big Ten Network will have Maryland, the Terrapins, Tulia Tagovailoa will be welcoming in Towson. So that'll be a game. Towson. There we go, Towson. And Texas, ranked 11th, will be welcoming in Rice on Fox. Big expectations for that program this year, hoping to win the Big 12 and possibly be in the playoff conversation. What quarterback will be playing in the second half for this game? Will it be a Manning? We will see. Expected to be 100 degrees on location there. The big game in the 3:30 slot, though, is number 10, the Washington Huskies, welcoming in the Boise State Broncos from the Mountain West Conference. 14-point spread on this at the moment with a 58.5-point over-under. Michael Penix is back to throw the ball all over the yard for the Washington Huskies. A fleet of great wide receiver talent that was open to his passes last year. He'll be back to receive a whole bunch of balls this season. They'll be hoping to compete for the Pac-12 title that they did not have the opportunity to last season. They lost out on the tiebreakers that would have put them into the conference championship game that instead sent USC and Utah. They're going to hope that that is not the case this season. Braylon Trice is one of the best pass rushers in the country, and that whole defensive line looks really strong. Now, Boise State fired their whole offensive coordinator, quarterback combination at the beginning of last season. It looked so pitiful. Taylor Green checked in at quarterback and didn't look awesome throwing the football, but was a great running piece to add to a couple great backs there that will be returning for the Boise State Broncos. They certainly have an opportunity to do some damage on the ground if they can get past those Washington bodies. And if they can throw the ball, they may be able to move it a little bit on this Washington defense in the secondary. We know that was a problem for several of the top Pac-12 teams last season. and they could win the Mountain West this year. Boise State can. They had a shot last year and fell to Fresno State in the championship game. So there's potential here for both of these teams by year's end to be conference championship winners. Keep an eye on this one. This is one of the best games on the slate, I think. Have an opportunity for two great quarterbacks if Green is able to mature a bit here in his first full year as a starter. Certainly will get the ground game going there. And we'll see if Washington has improved defensively, particularly behind that defensive line as they take out a very tough group of offenses heading into conference play. And we'll see where Boise State really stands. They're going to have a great offense here. The number one Power 5 passer last year, second in the country behind Austin Reed at Western Kentucky. So we'll see what kind of battle we get here. That's the 3:30 ABC game and the top one on the watch slate as far as I'm concerned. Boise State at Washington. Now there's a spattering of games after that. Mississippi State hosting Southeast Louisiana at 4 o'clock on the SEC network. Syracuse hosting Colgate on the ESPN Plus network at 4 o'clock. But those are kind of the highlights in the afternoon. So the evening slate, that's 6 to 8 start time in the Eastern time zone, or late afternoon for those of you on the West Coast there. That has about 27 games in it. 8 ranked squads are playing. There are a couple clear-cut favorites here. The number one game is the 7:30 ABC. South Carolina's hosting North Carolina. North Carolina is currently ranked 21st in the country. They're favored by 2.5 points on the road, a 64.5 point over-under. Lots of points of expected. Drake May, of course, came on as a great quarterback last season, but of course the Tar Heels had monstrous problems, nearly losing to Appalachian State in Game 2. Game 1, they give up a boatload of points to Florida A&M. They lost a couple of games at the end of the regular season and backed their way into the ACC championship game where they were blown out. The defense has been a big problem and will probably be a big problem again. But Drake May is there, the number one receiver, who's a transfer that the Tar Heels are hoping to bring in. Devontae Walker from Kent State, that Kent State roster that was just hollowed out with a whole bunch of guys transferring out of that program. Again, good talent there, even though it was a MAC program, supposed to be the number one, and his transfer request was denied. An appeal is in place, and there's been no word on him. So as of right now, North Carolina does not have a top receiver at the position for Drake May to throw to, but still a great quarterback there. South Carolina, of course, Spencer Rattler back under center. They were very inconsistent last year for Shane Beamer until they smacked the hell out of both Clemson and Tennessee, more specifically Tennessee in that route, although Hendon Hooker was banged up in that game at the beginning there and missed the end of the season and the end of that game. And of course, they played Notre Dame within a touchdown in their bowl game. But a nice end to the season for South Carolina trying to capitalize. So now these two teams going head-to-head in the Duke's Mayo Classic traditional matchup here. South Carolina and North Carolina. Big game. Neither of these teams are projected to necessarily play a big role in the conference races for the SEC or ACC, respectively. But both of them are on my top 10 top TV watch teams, which is a little wordy. Perhaps I should work on that. But teams that I enjoy to watch on television, I think they're going to be great this season. If not winning a lot of games, then playing very competitively and have high ceilings. And playing each other on opening weekend, week 1 here, this is can't miss as far as I'm concerned. The best game on the slate. We also have Illinois hosting Toledo at 7:30 on the Big Ten Network. This has fallen to below a 10-point spread for the Illini. This is kind of a big deal. Toledo did manage to win the MAC conference last year. Daquan Finn is back for the Rockets. Not a very good quarterback, but can scramble around quite a bit. The defense should be in a pretty good spot. Illinois themselves should still have a pretty good defensive line there. Quarterback and offensive positions are going to probably be a step back from last year, but very interesting matchup there on the Big Ten Network that shouldn't be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. NBC will have the 7th-ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State playing a Power 5 opponent, but it's going to be West Virginia, and they're favored by nearly 3 scores in that one. I don't know if it'll be that dramatic, but they do have a coach on the hot seat there in Brown for West Virginia. Penn State, on the other hand, 2 of the best running backs in the country. Drew Aller is in under center there, taking over for Sean Clifton, who played for about 7,000 years there. And the big 6'5" kid played a number of games last season, and we'll see what he can do as far as that passing game. Not a lot of big weapons at the receiver position. Defense looks really good again, but Penn State could cause some damage when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State matchups there in the Big Ten, projected by some to make it into the playoffs. We'll see what kind of damage they can do to West Virginia. Alabama will be playing on the SEC network. They'll be hosting Middle Tennessee. We don't know who's going to be playing quarterback there yet. Jalen Milroe, who was on the bench last year, or will it be a Buckner that transferred in from Notre Dame? Doesn't exactly look stellar there at that position from Alabama. It's possible with one of the best offensive lines in Saban's tenure, they simply hand the ball off and run everybody over. Oklahoma State at 7 o'clock on the Big 12 network and ESPN Plus will be hosting Central Arkansas. Baylor will be hosting Texas State at 7 o'clock on the Big 12 network and ESPN Plus. Washington State at 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network will be playing at Colorado State. That was a great defensive team last year, and a great play from Cameron Ward, who came over from Incarnate Word. We'll see if he's able to elevate the offense this season. Vanderbilt playing game number 2 at 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus, hosting Alabama A&M. We'll see if that offense takes a step in the right direction after looking disgusting last week. Kansas State also at 7 o'clock. They'll be hosting Southeast Missouri State on the Big 12 network. Of course, the Wildcats there trying to make it back to the Pac-12 Conference Championship game after winning last season. They do have their part-time starting quarterback back there in Will Howard. Their Deuce Vaughn is gone, their top quarterback. Felix, their top defensive end, is gone. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to still compete in that conference. It's going to be very fluid there in the Big 12. USC will be buried on the Pac-12 network at 6:30. They're hosting Nevada. How many points will they give up this week? San Jose State sure did some damage last week, although we don't know if it's because they're playing a little vanilla against inferior competition, or if there are some problems that they do still have to shore up there with all the transfers trying to improve on that defensive end after the problems they had last year. They're 38-point favorites, so should still be a blowout there, but that's the 6:30 Pac-12 USC. Texas A&M will get New Mexico. That'll be in prime time ESPN on the 7 o'clock slot. 38-point favorites right now are the Aggies. Connor Wingman, there we go. Connor Wingman, working off the top of the dome here, will be in at quarterback. Again, top recruiting class in the history of evaluating talent. Came in last year for the Aggies, and they were not a good football team at all. Second year for a lot of these players, especially on the defensive side. Not going to learn a whole lot by playing New Mexico, the Lobos there. But College Station should probably be rocking. It'll be 100 degrees, and we'll see if we can see a little bit better quarterback play this season, maybe a healthier offensive line, and see if we can see them do some damage with all these top prospects here on ESPN at 7 o'clock. Now, another decent matchup here. Houston is now a Big 12 team. Don't forget that. Moving from the American Conference to the Big 12. They'll be hosting UTSA. It was flip-flopped last season on this home-and-home series. This is a 7 o'clock FS1. The Roadrunners are favored by a couple points on the road with a 60-point over-under. This game went to multiple overtimes last year. Houston lost a whole bunch of pieces on both sides of the ball. It's a little bit questionable what the program's going to be. Not a great spot moving to a Power 5 conference. UTSA actually took their place in the American Conference, moving from Conference USA. And they're going to be in really a competition with Tulane for top spot this year. But they have great offensive talent, as they did last season. But some of the corners and back-end defense that they had problems with last year are really improved as well. It should be a great all-around Woodpecker team, Roadrunner team. And UTSA could cause some damage. I'm kind of excited to see what happens here. I'm a big UTSA advocate, and this is going to be one of the bigger matchups of the year for them, really. So that's a 7 o'clock FS1, the UTSA Roadrunners in Houston, and what could be a big shootout game. Now, this may seem like an odd one, but CBS, primetime CBS at 7:30, is going to be airing Texas Tech traveling to Wyoming to play in Laramie, Wyoming, there in Memorial Stadium. The Cowboys have always had a pretty good program there in general, and sometimes pretty good for them is 7-5 and 6-6, but they always have a pretty feisty group there, pretty dangerous. Going to be a little weatherish, I think, possible rain or thunderstorms. And Texas Tech coming in there, a lot expected from this team. Lots of quarterback injuries last year, but Tyler Shaw, and you'll hear this on the broadcast as well, he transferred in from Oregon, missed several games last year, but he's 8-0 when he started for them. Now the top defensive end is on to the NFL. They do have to replace some help on the defensive line there. But this is a team that's expected to do a bunch of damage. The coaching philosophy is to certainly go for it on short yardage and on fourth downs. They're not afraid to play that game, and they're going to pass on you, and they're going to rush you, and Texas Tech can be a little feisty and a very interesting team to watch. However, going on the road, game 1 to Wyoming, and like this feisty team that will certainly do some things to you and is well coached, that's going to be an interesting little matchup there on CBS, where you usually see teams like Ohio State and Florida. It's kind of weird, but Texas Tech and Wyoming will be on your screen, CBS, on Saturday night. Now, ESPNU at 8 o'clock will have Tulane, who's currently coming in ranked 24th in the preseason poll. They're only 6.5-point favorites right now on South Alabama. And I know, a directional whatever school. But South Alabama, for those who aren't paying attention to some of the smaller schools, has been very powerful in the Sun Belt Conference since coming up from a lower level the past couple of years. Record-wise, it hasn't necessarily reflected, but they've been very competitive. They nearly beat UCLA on the road last year. The Bruins had to come back and kick a field goal in order to survive that game. And it could be a close one here. Just a very feisty team. They're going to be physical. They're well coached. Their quarterback, Carter Bradley, is back, and they could definitely hang with Tulane, who's returning their quarterback, Michael Pratt, and some of their defensive pieces as well. Great success for that team last year, and they got to watch out, though. South Alabama could sneak up and grab them in week 1 here. And the last one, almost not worth mentioning, Virginia Tech has struggled for a very long time now. We're talking a bowl game every 3 years, basically, at this point, since Frank Beamer has retired from that program a decade and a half ago. They're hosting Old Dominion at 8 o'clock on the ACC network. They're favored by 16 at this particular point, or that's the line sits at least. But Old Dominion has gotten them recently and been kind of a dangerous team here since they've elevated to the FBS level. They got Coastal Carolina last year on homecoming, and Coastal Carolina is supposed to be a better team. So got to watch out for that. Finally, the late night slate has a handful of games. We're looking at 6 games. No ranked teams are playing, and there's one that clearly sticks out in the 10:30 time slot. That's the UCLA Bruins hosting Coastal Carolina on ESPN. The Bruins sitting at just over a couple touchdown favorites, which is not that high, all things considered. 60-plus points on the over-under, pushing towards 70. Grayson McCall, the 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year, is back under center for Coastal Carolina. He's now exhausted his eligibility. He considered entering the transfer portal, but he is back, and he will make the Chanticleers go. They were, of course, ranked at one point. A couple years back, they were in some bigger games. They played BYU. He's elevated this program and we now sort of know what a Chanticleer is-ish. But he is what makes this team go. The defense was 102nd last year and not going to be much better this year. They lost a number of pieces, and we'll have a bunch of new young guys in the mix. UCLA plays an easier schedule than most in Pac-12 conference play, so they do have a potential route to the conference championship, maybe to something bigger. But it starts with a big non-conference win here. It's not going to be big in the grand scheme of things, but a nice win. Let's start with that. Chip Kelly's got a quarterback battle going on here. Ethan Garbers was named the starter, but I'm not sure that means anything because Colin Sheely is still going to get playing time if they're able to put some distance in between themselves and Coastal Carolina. And Dante Moore, the true freshman from Martin Luther King High School in Michigan, I had an opportunity to see him play a little bit in one of his more challenging games. He had a tough time, but he's really talented. I'd love to see him take the starting position. I'm sure other Bruins fans would as well, but he'll be in the mix with two other guys as they have a three-way battle here. But the official starter running out of the tunnel here will be Ethan Garbers against Coastal Carolina at 10:30 on the Eastern Standard Time slate here on ESPN in the late night schedule. The other games playing, there's not a whole lot going on here. UTEP will play its second game against Incarnate Word. New Mexico State will get its second game against Western Illinois. Those are both at 9 o'clock on ESPN+. Arizona will be squirreled away on the Pac-12 network, playing Northern Arizona at 10 o'clock. Jaden DeLora back under center there. They doubled their win total last season as they tried to improve specifically on the defensive side of the ball. BYU will have Keldon Slovic under center there, his third school in 3 years as they make the move to the Big 12, and they'll be playing Sam Houston, who just moved up to the highest level of college football. Congratulations to them. They'll be playing at 10:15 on FS1, and then a late game, also at 10:30, will be San Diego State playing their second game of the season. Of course, they survived Ohio last week, whose starting quarterback, Chris Werke, went down and just managed to survive that. Brady Hoke and company did. And they'll get a much easier opponent in Idaho State on the CBS Sports Network. So that'll wrap your Saturday schedule. Sunday has 3 games, and they lined up perfectly, so you can watch them all in a row. At 12 o'clock, CBS will have Northwestern at Rutgers. 3:30 we'll have on CBS. Oregon State will be at San Jose State. And the game that matters, 7:30 on ABC, LSU will be at Florida State. Now, Rutgers, Northwestern it's really a coin flip, honestly. Rutgers is favored by almost a touchdown. I don't know why. Neither of these teams they're going to be the worst teams in maybe Power 5, certainly the Big 10 this year. San Jose State will be getting its second game. They looked pretty good against USC last week. They seem to be firing on all cylinders. Now, Oregon State ranked 18th in the preseason poll, in part because they have a real quarterback this year, and they lost a couple of close games and really won a couple of close games too, but they had no good quarterback on the roster last year. DJ Uiagalelei's checking in from Clemson, and he's, regardless of how he actually plays, he's immediately an upgrade at the position. The defense is pretty well set on what they're able to do and be disruptive, and they're in a good position. They're not going to be the most talented team in the Pac-12, but regardless, they were really close to practically winning the conference last year. I mean, they had 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, a -4 turnover margin in a game against USC last year. They lost by a touchdown. That could have been the difference in putting them in the Pac-12 Conference Championship game or not. DJ Uiagalelei is hoping to change that. The guy can wiggle a little bit. He can run. He can throw the ball. He does have some costly turnovers that he hopefully can cut down on moving over here. But he was critical of Clemson's offense and how he was used within that structure. Hopefully he'll be better at Oregon State. Again, 3:30 CBS on Sunday. Oregon State, San Jose State. Could be an interesting little game. The Beavers are favored by 16.5 at the moment. And the big one, ABC, 7:30, 8th-ranked Florida State, 5th-ranked LSU, in a game that has 2 teams that could possibly be fighting for the playoffs, and we could have an eliminator game right off the rip. Big deal. LSU's defense wasn't actually that great last season. It certainly had some problems, gave up some yardage. They do have a big defensive lineman that's out due to some terrible NIL restrictions that the NCAA is enforcing due to violations just prior to NIL actually go into effect as a legal practice. It's really some garbage, and it would have been taken care of last year, but he was hurt. So they decided to allow him to come back healthy and then retroactively punish him for it and hold it against him and do it on the biggest game of one of the biggest games on their slate as he comes back from injury after missing a year. And it's just ridiculous. So Mason Smith will not be playing on that defensive line going up against a good offensive line for Florida State. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. LSU will have Harold Perkins, though, who's moving up and down from linebacker to possibly up on that defensive line, and he'll be all over the place. He'll be in the NFL one day. He'll be the most impactful player on that defense for LSU. Florida State fixing some things up on the defense as well. They have great players on their front defensive line as well that will be very disruptive to LSU. LSU is also rebuilding its secondary, a number of guys coming in through the transfer portal to help improve the back end there. And they're going to be tested by Jordan Travis and a fleet of good receiver talents. Jordan Travis can also wiggle a little bit, get on the move, get out of the pocket, and cause some damage. Not entirely certain that he's actually going to be a good NFL player, but he's a great college quarterback right now. There's not much else that can be said there. One of the 5 best quarterbacks in the country, arguably, might be right behind Caleb Williams and Drake May. So he's certainly in the conversation. And of course, they got the MSU kid Cole transferring in as well at the receiver position, just to add to the fleet they have going on there. LSU, Jaden Daniels, good at running the ball, helping move in the pocket, doing some damage there, but had problems throwing last year, not just putting them in bad positions, but seemingly just either missing reads or deciding not to throw the ball downfield. Hopefully that's been erased a little bit as they have some of the best wide receiver talent this season. They did last year as well, and he just wasn't taking advantage of it. I think they had a few problems in the offensive line last year, again, trying to shore some of that up. But Jaden Daniels has got to let the ball go, just like Jordan Travis does. This could be a shootout. This could be very disruptive for both quarterbacks all around the offensive front. Right now, we have got a line sitting at 2.5 LSU's way. This is a neutral site game in Orlando, and the over-under sitting at 56 points. But this is one of the best games of the weekend. Certainly a great Sunday game. And so keep your schedule clear for this. I don't know what else to tell you. It's Sunday, 7:30, ABC. Watch this on something. Your phone, your television, your tablet, under the covers, LSU and Florida State. And Monday will be your standalone game. Happy Labor Day weekend. You get a better game than you did last year. Last year it was Clemson and Georgia Tech. This year Clemson is ranked 9th in the preseason poll, and they're traveling to Durham, North Carolina. They'll be playing the Duke Blue Devils on ESPN. The line is 13 right now. It's been stuck on that for a little while. 55.5 point over-under. And this is going to be a good football game because Duke has a real quarterback, and sometimes that can make all the difference. But Riley Leonard can do some damage there. The 6'4" kid from Fairhope, Alabama, has done some good things there for Duke. They have a much more difficult schedule this year. So by the end of the year, the Duke Blue Devils may be right around 6-6, 7-5, something like that. But he is a good quarterback. You will hear more buzz about him as you did Daniel Jones years back, who was also from Duke. But Riley Leonard can do some real damage. He's a good quarterback. He can whip it around. And on the other end, he might be the best quarterback on the field because we don't know exactly what we're getting with Cade Klubnik yet. He played quite a few games last year for Clemson and took the starting position, but he did not look spectacular, and they got thumped by Tennessee in their bowl game. So I'll have to see if an off season with him as the upcoming starter really made a difference in what he can do, because he's not looking so sharp so far. Wide receiver talent, hopefully they get some upgrades there. Will Shipley at running back, it still seems to be like an underutilized guy. Almost 1,200 yards last year, 5.6 yards a carry and 15 touchdowns, and it still seems like they don't use him as they could. They did have injuries up and down last year, but it's not out of this world for the defensive line, the linebacking unit, the cornerback unit to all be top 5 at their respective group positions nationally in each of those areas. They should be really good defensively in year 2 post Brent Venables, even if Cade Klubnik is not able to really push the ceiling and raise that area for the offense. All right, your top watch categories for week 1. Let's fill them in. I started this last season when I was going through kind of the watch guides, breakdown week to week. So your must watch of this week, and we can actually do one for each of the time slots because it's spread out over multiple days, and we do the time windows here. So Thursday, today, you're going to be watching Florida and Utah. That's the easy one. Friday, you're going to have several different picks, but ESPN's going to have Louisville and Georgia Tech. If your taste is more Miami, Michigan State, or Kansas, those games will be on as well. Saturday, you have a nice lineup. At noon, you can watch Colorado and TCU on Fox, followed by Boise State and Washington on ABC. Heading towards the evening, you can watch North Carolina and South Carolina, one of the best games of the week. In the evening hours, you can catch UCLA and Coastal Carolina for a half there before that probably gets out of control. That's a nice lineup there. I'd say your top watch of the week, though, comes on Sunday, which is pretty obvious, with LSU and Florida State taking the field in the evening, a rematch of last year where a blocked field goal gave Florida State the big victory there. And then Monday, our only game is Clemson and Duke. So we have a nice lineup there. But Florida State, LSU, the big one. Saturday, I'd say North Carolina and South Carolina if you're trying to carve out one section of time to watch football. Besides trying to catch your favorite team, I'd say that North Carolina-South Carolina game in the evening would be the one to catch. Audible. The softest part of the slate is the mid-afternoon this upcoming Saturday. So, which game would you turn to if all the games kind of turn sour, go to garbage? I actually recommend turning into FS1 and checking out Wisconsin hosting Buffalo. Now, Ohio State will be playing at the same time. Texas A&M will be playing at the same time. Wisconsin certainly isn't going to lose this game. A lot of teams should not come close to losing. Wisconsin is replacing as much as any other team in the country besides Colorado. Luke Fickell's coming over from Cincinnati. You got a new coaching staff. You have a new quarterback in SMU's Tanner Mordecai coming over, taking over that position. The offense is going to be opened up a little bit more. Have to see what's going on with the defense this year, which should still be a solid unit, but is it going to be the best in that division? Of course, we have Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois still over there. Not going anywhere right now. Next year, we'll lose the divisions. Wisconsin might be able to place a case if they're able to get the pieces pulled together. The schedule isn't too difficult to do some damage if they make it to the Big Ten championship game, while Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are ping-ponging off each other in the other side there. So Wisconsin, first look at Wisconsin against Buffalo on FS1 as an option if some of the other games are starting to go south. And shout out Danny Foligno over there working in strength and conditioning with the Wisconsin Badgers, one of my former high school quarterbacks. Congratulations to him. My check-in game is in the 7:30 evening slot. West Virginia and number 7 Penn State's playing on NBC, of course. Penn State favored big time there, but Drew Aller, the new quarterback, is in there, of course, and 2 excellent running backs, and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. So keep an eye on those young fellas. And Neil Brown for West Virginia. It was a little shocking to most that he wasn't let go last season after the struggles West Virginia has had. But he's heard that now. That whole team has heard that the whole offseason they're going to be the worst team in the Big 12. Will they be able to keep things spicy on opening weekend? Small screen starlet. Best game between two non-Power 5 teams, also in the evening slot. Number 24, Tulane, hosting South Alabama. Be a good, gritty, low-scoring defensive battle. Last year it was UTSA and Houston, but this year, of course, Houston's in the Big 12. Underrated game, evening slot as well. Got a lot of interesting games here. That's the CBS game. Texas Tech heading to Wyoming. Talked about that a little bit earlier. Wyoming, always an interesting program there. Texas Tech expect to make some moves in the Big 12 this upcoming season with a good quarterback. Hopefully a good defense there. And your late night snack, as discussed as well. Late night bite there. Last game on the slate, the best of the bunch. Probably UCLA, Coastal Carolina, although we do have a thin schedule right now. Generally, we get those Pac-12 games playing a little bit later, and some of the Mountain West as well. But right now, it's a light slate in Week 1, and we're not sure who the great teams are going to be worth flipping on. So that's going to be your late night snack to round out the categories here. So enjoy the first full week of college football spread out over multiple days. And I'll catch up with you later. Thanks for listening.